Well, hello everybody. Well, I apologize for that there, but we were trying to make sure that we get everything out to our listening and viewing audience and things of that nature. But again, welcome to another fabulous show of Let's Talk About It Wednesday. We are definitely attempting to are starting to have some of them cooler temperatures. Hey man, just for giggles here, we are on Banks for Share, right?
We are. I shared it on that page already, so we should be able to see it now.
Really?
Yep.
I'm feeling some type of way over here right now.
Uh-oh. He's being treated differently, you guys.
Right. I'm not seeing it, but whatever. But again, we like each and every week, man, we got some fabulous things that we need to talk about. Definitely some things you may need to know that's happening right here in our backyard and also abroad. Unfortunately, we was again supposed to have a guest, but I don't know what has happened to the gentleman with sweetie cutie pies or something like that. There, they have not necessarily reached out and connected, as I was hoping, but I will make sure I kind of follow up with them just to see where things are at. But we hope that they are doing well and everything is going good with them. Other than that, man, have you seen any of the NBA preseason games?
I have not.
What? Well, I'll tell you this here. The Minnesota Timberwolves, look pretty good. They look darn good, to be totally honest with you. They've played 2 games so far. They won the first one, and they lost the second game by 1 point. But the way that they fought, was just absolutely remarkable. They were down by like 19 points, and I believe in the fourth quarter, and they came back to tie it up and send it into to overtime, and had a really clean look, at a final shot. When the clock was winding down. And unfortunately, he was just not successful in hitting it.
Well,
And they ended up losing by 1 instead of winning by 2. But it was not necessarily the win or loss for me as it was the fight that they had to claw back from 19 down and tie it up and send it into overtime, which I thought was extremely remarkable. So, Steelers
are looking great, and we're back this week against the Cleveland Browns.
Okay.
We continue to sit at the top of the AFC North in first place at 3-1. So we're looking to go ahead and continue that. Kansas City, had a great showing on Monday. It was a really good game. They took a loss on the chin there.
Yeah.
But it was a really good game. But Cleveland is looking to try to dim our light a little bit, coming off that loss in England to the Minnesota Vikings. And as you know, Minnesota, they played a great game. Cleveland made them look like superstars.
I don't know if I would say all that.
I
don't know if I'd say all that.
Cleveland, we were like, oh my God. But no, the Vikings looked pretty good. They were, some things that they could work on, but for the most part, given the fact they were playing with, some of their guys wrapped up in injury, they looked pretty good.
Yeah, well, I will say this here. I'm a diehard fan, but I'm also a realistic fan. I will definitely take the victory, absolutely. But again, I was just not impressed, with all of the punts. There definitely seemed to be some issues with that offensive line.
Right.
Because we know that our quarterback is, he's kind of getting up there. He's been around for a while, so he's just not moving as fluent as maybe he could have or should have in the past or did in the past. But again, that was a remarkable catch, for that touchdown. And I think that the Cleveland Browns kind of panicked there a little bit in that last minute and a half of the game. They still had 3 timeouts. They still kind of had that 2-minute timeout, but all of a sudden they were
Well, they're playing with their backup quarterback. Old Joe Flacco is, Sleepy Joe sitting on the sideline watching the game, and they haven't reached the concept to put Sanders in. It can't get any worse at this point. You would think they go, well, let's see if Sanders is worth, spending the money on or trading him off, because that's what I would do at this point down by that many games.
Right.
But, yeah, so we're looking forward to giving Cleveland a run for their money. And, right now we have to be really careful because Cleveland's a desperate team.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're a desperate team. And as you know, desperate teams play desperate games, and there's some serious hits in those games. There'll be some shots and things of that because this is a division game, and it's kind of going to decide who's going to the big dance and who's buying tickets.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Well, again, I'm certain that my beloved Vikings will kind of work on the things that they need to work on both sides of the board, on both sides of the ball. And, our injured starters will work their way, back in. Of course, there's always that quarterback controversy. When J.J. McCarthy kind of gets healthy, will he be back in? How will he play? Will they let him, kind of come back, or they're going to kind of keep who's playing now? I mean, so there's just always so many questions kind of surrounding, our ball club there. But, we'll see. We'll see what happens. As long as they kind of continue to put together those victories, and then hopefully we will be able to see Pittsburgh one more time, because we owe y'all something.
Yeah, unfortunately, unless you guys get to the big dance, you'll be watching from a distance. All right?
Say who's going to the dance or who's buying tickets.
That's right. Every year Pittsburgh is there. We're fighting this year. What we're trying to prove this year is that we can get there. Every year we're there. So we do have an expectation that we'll make the playoffs, but now we want to be able to push past the playoffs and into the championship Super Bowl. So that's our goal, and that's what we're working on, and we're making some adjustments on and off the field to make sure that happens.
Well, I have to say before we kind of move forward here is that I am absolutely impressed, and I take my hat off to the Steelers, and that organization for having the trust and the belief and the support in their head coach for as long as they have. That is outstanding. Now, I will say this here. I believe that the coach that the Minnesota Vikings have right now has that same capability, of having some of them same successes as Mike Tomlin over there in Pittsburgh. And I hope that the Minnesota Vikings organization will see that, and we will have him around for many years to come. But hats off to Pittsburgh and the coaching staff over there for what they have done, for the 18, 19 years that he's been the head coach.
Yeah, Mike and I, we try our best, man. We try our best. No, but again, for the Vikings, though, man, I just think that the secret to the Vikings is they have to realize, and this has always been an issue for them, is that guys play lights out all the time, right? The Vikings have a history of trying to play conservative. Now, there are some teams out there that are kind of a run and gun type team. If we can get the run started, the pass will open up. That's never been the Vikings' forte. Their forte is always throw the ball and the run opens. It's always been kind of opposite.
Right.
And so they have a tendency to like win games, scoring major points when they realize I can sling the ball downfield. And when they go back to that conservative game is when they lose games, man. And that's their thing. Their thing is throwing the ball. If you want to catch the ball as a receiver, go to Minnesota because they got gunslingers, but you got to let them go. You gotta let them go,
especially with them receivers that we have, man.
You have to let those guys go, man. And that's been the problem is that Jefferson's wide open and frustrated because he's down the field, nobody on him, and you dump the ball behind the line for a 3-yard loss. If I can see it in the film, you actually own the film. You should be able to see it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, man, with that being said, man, there's some things that we need to kind of talk to the people about. Some things that they need to know. again, pertaining to a lot of safety, and issues that are kind of going on here in our own backyard and kind of across the country. But before we get started, man, I need you to go ahead and hit them with that famous backpack and do some of them housekeeping rules.
Yes, of course. We simply ask that you respect everyone's comments and statements. And if you need to reach us, remember you can inbox us or call us or text us, and we'll do our best to respond to your comments either on this show or the very next show. With that being said, we start middling in that show with the backpack. And that backpack consists of making sure you have your driver's license and insurance with you before you get in that vehicle. Remember to place them above the visor. That way, if stopped by law enforcement, they're easily accessible. Remember to stay calm. Keep your hands where they can be seen. Allow the officer to go through his spiel. And as always, make it on home to your loved ones. Same thing when walking down the street. Make sure you got your driver's license or ID where it's easily accessible. Remember to keep your hands where they can be seen. Stay calm. Allow the officer to go through his spiel. And as always, make it on home to your loved ones.
Absolutely. And again, I'm just going to piggyback on that just a little bit as, we have continued to see the increase of individuals, getting their permit to carries and things of that nature, due to a lot of the propaganda, that's out there. They've opened up the doors, if you will, for younger folks to kind of get their stuff. I will start actually today. Will I be doing what we call the tip of the week? So I'm going to be providing a tip for each week as far as what it means to be a positive and productive gun owner and things of that nature. So look forward to that. That's coming to a Facebook near you.
Yes. And real quick, guys, I just want to make you aware, too, I'm running for sheriff and everything. So remember that you can go to, www.banks4sheriff.weebly.com or banksforsheriff.com. And remember, you can click on the calendar and you'll be able to see our upcoming events. We're going to be kicking off here in the next few weeks that Cup of Joe with Joe. So I'll be in a different city in Hennepin County starting next week. Each week, getting a chance to meet the voters, getting the word out, start having some serious conversations about what it looks like for our administration to take over in Hennepin County of Sheriff. As you know, Sheriff Witt's been there for almost 8 years. And we think she's doing a really good job within the means and structure. However, there are some things that we believe we can do better.
Indeed.
And there's some things that we believe we can do better to keep the county safe. So I think a lot of the things that Sheriff Witt is doing is great. After the fact, but we want to do some things to prevent people from going to jail and to try to prevent people from dying in Hennepin County. So just wanted to throw that out there so that folks are aware. Remember, it's www.banksforsheriff.com. All right?
Absolutely. Well, man, with that being said, as we're, first of all, last week we kind of talked a little bit more about voting and just how important it is for people to get out, and vote. We're hoping to have a guest on here within the next week or so, as she's running for Ward 5, I believe it is.
Okay.
So kudos to all of the candidates and those that are out there trying to make a difference, wanting to see things better, et cetera, et cetera. I want to say thank you and hats off to Neon. I went to a kind of a business class last night that they were hosting over there on Broadway, and it was very very informational. So if you are some young entrepreneur or you're looking to perhaps get some type of business started, connect with those guys over there. Robin McClare, who is the business coordinator.
Okay.
I believe her title is. She's doing a fabulous job. They are doing a fabulous job over there. They have a lot of other different services and resources as well. So again, hats off to them and keep doing what you guys are doing over there. But with that being said, man, safety and security.
Yes.
Things that people need to know, right? First of all, safety and security is always on people's minds, right? But the number one thing that always impacts safety and security is budget. People are always looking at budget and what does that look like? What does that mean? Can I get away with cameras? Can I get away with lighting? Does that lighting have to be on all the time, or is it motion? What type of safety system do I need to have as far as an alarm? Do I need to have physical security? And you had stated before that there is plenty of different levels, when it kind of comes to, safety and security, and they all play a certain role.
They do. Layers is always what works best in security.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, depending on the type of services, that you have, the type of assets that you're trying to protect, whether that's actual property and or employees and things of that nature, you have to have, you should have, it behooves me if you don't have some form of physical security. So then therefore that individual can intervene, on a more immediate, type of basis. We know that things are not cheap. Right. No. And things are only getting more expensive, but again, if you are unable to protect your assets, meaning your staff, and you can't get no staff to work there, then it's really going to have an impact on the overall outcome of your business, on how late you might be able to stay open. Are you going to perhaps have to maybe pay a little bit more, or, are you going to have to end up closing your doors?
Yeah, I mean, I think if people aren't willing to go all in on safety and security, then they're asleep at the wheel. Because nothing that you do is going to matter if people there are in danger. Either your guests or yourselves or your property will at some point be in danger. So if you're not willing to go all in, you're missing the whole concept. And remember, security is only as strong as the management, right? So even the young security officer that's walking around there doing rounds, he's only good if the management supports him, right, and stands behind his decision-making process, and if the local law enforcement also supports them as well. So it's like a collaborative effort between the management and leadership to make sure they're, supporting the policies that they're asking to be enforced, and the community themselves with law enforcement is supporting them. I mean, when one security says, "Hey, I had this happen. I need you guys to show up," are the cops showing up, actually taking action, or they drive the guy a block away and let them go?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important to have that safety plan, so then therefore you can follow up and follow through. But in addition to, connecting with your local law enforcement and maybe even your city council person of that area where you have your business and things of that nature, we've always talked about how important it was to know your neighbors, right?
Yes.
Same thing concept in business. Know your neighbors, because I can guarantee you, for the most part, they're having some same or similar issues that you're having. You know what I'm saying? So when you talk about budget, you guys can work together, to hire a contract entity, and then that entity can provide security for both establishments. And then therefore you don't have to foot the whole bill, alone.
Yeah.
And you're still getting some form of services, to ensure or help prevent, any type of unwanted, illegal,
right?
Activity.
What they say is that invisible shield. So we don't want the shield to kind of stop at the glass right here. If we both kick in, then the shield's around the entire building, and we both get equal protection, and so we're both safe. And I think people should understand that. Just what you said, that folks going in on the bill, man, if we can get great service for $200 each, it's still costing us $600, but you know what I mean? And so it's not costing me directly anything, you know what I mean? So that's important.
I would also say for those business owners is that if you are, renting, property, from a management, maybe you guys also need to be getting together and asking why, this management company is not providing security services, for that mall, that complex, whatever, that is. But again, if it's not necessarily written in your contract, then it kind of falls back on you. Then that's when it's important.
Yeah, years ago when I was in security, I used to always tell people, understand the history of what you're asking me.
Oh my God,
right?
yes.
Because when you ask for security, you know your history of your building and your property.
Right.
And so if your property has a history of bad behavior and you only want to pay for a body, then you don't complain to me, right? Because I can find you some guy that's just happy to show up and smile and do absolutely nothing. We do have those in the security field because a lot of clients want just the guy who shows up and he's friends with everybody. Now, if you want some property that's actually, where the security officers are hypersensitive in terms of being proactive and on the plan, and then supporters there. Spend the money. You have to spend the money to get a qualified individual there. Right, we can't put a guy who's got years of experience and background in security for $10-12 an hour. That's just not going to cut it. And don't complain.
Yeah,
don't complain, because you can get Joe Citizen to walk around your building for free, right? But if you want a professional, it's going to cost you some bucks, and you got to be willing to pay for it. And if not, you get what you pay for.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm going to kind of piggyback. You have to know what that ask is. But here I will also say this as well, is that these contract security companies need to be honest, with a potential client to let them know, legally, or lawfully, can they even, provide, that service before they're putting their name down, on that contract to agree to do, what they're asking.
Yeah, because I have no idea why we still stick unarmed people in high impact areas, right? And what I mean when I say high impact, I mean this place is drug infested, gang problems, we have prior shootings, stabbings, and you only want me to have a guard here with a flashlight and a phone. Right. I mean, it's the truth, because a lot of people don't realize the security officer is the target of whatever that offender's trying to do. He's that defense, right? And if you expect him to at least be able to protect himself, not even being just actively trying to arrest him, but even just protecting himself in case he comes around the corner and walks upon something. Right. He should have the ability to be able to protect himself, get to a safe area, and contact law enforcement, blah, blah, blah. So those are the type of things that they're not even talking about. We don't want our guys there armed. Okay, you don't want the guy there armed, but then someone gets stabbed. You're like, well, why didn't they do anything? Yeah, because we don't fight knives barehanded. That's not us. The jiu-jitsu days are clean over, right? That's not Steven Seagal watching your property, or Walker, Texas Ranger.
But again, I also want to say that individuals that's seeking security services and things of that nature, please make sure that you take the time to vet these companies appropriately, for various different reasons. Number one, and nothing else, make sure that they're legally able to be in business, because there's still several entities out there that is providing services, and again, they try to get away with these terms of de-escalation specialists and things of that nature. And let me explain something to you. De-escalation is something that, all entities provide. So it's nothing that's separated, from security. It's nothing separated from law enforcement. It's nothing separated from security. And we all provide some form, or should be providing some form of de-escalation.
In the initial security assessment, because all security and protection agencies should do, security risk assessments first. And that's where we come out and tell the client the truth. Like, look, you got broken windows. These doors don't work. Those locks are garbage. So you tell them everything that's wrong. Then we sit down and go, okay, but what can you really afford, right? Because a lot of people, we only need two guys. Yeah, two guys and the doors are open all the time. That's not going to help us. You're not tagging the clients for leaving the door open or prying the doors open. You know what I mean? Those are security issues. And so if you're not taking the time to understand what it is you're asking for, right? You're going to get just what you asked for, a security officer, right? And you want a security professional, right? You want that professional security there that's going to take into consideration whether or not their fire extinguishers are being checked, whether you're doing proper rounds, that preventative stuff that's going to save you money.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, man, it's ask to see their insurance.
Yes.
Ask to receive a copy of their license. Things of that nature. So then, therefore, that you have vetted them appropriately.
And some references.
Absolutely, references. Absolutely,
like other folks you have worked for, right?
Yeah. Because again, you want to make sure that you're going to get what you're paying for, and hopefully, that what you're paying for is really going to be able to take care of and protect or provide the services that you need for your business.
And understand that you're not buying a police department. All right, these guys are enforcing policy and procedures. They're not enforcing laws. So,
absolutely,
don't be, why you didn't draw your gun and shoot him in the knee? All right, yeah, that is not what he's getting paid to do.
Right,
all right, that's not what he's been trained to do, and his job is to enforce policy. And remember that security officers are civilians with authority from the property in which they're trying to protect. And so don't be having them run down the street and mad and wanting to fire them because they didn't. All right? All right? Liability. Again, that's an issue for police departments, not protection agencies or security companies.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. Well, man, I just want to kind of pivot here and talk about the DOJ, suing the state of Minnesota as they are claiming that Minnesota is providing a safe haven, for illegal immigrants, which is, creating, unsafe conditions, things of that nature. Now, I do know that both the mayor of Minneapolis and the mayor of St. Paul held a little press conference independently and kind of speaking on this lawsuit and stating that they will stand, with their immigrants community and work with them to be able to help them through these challenging times.
Where do I start on that?
Man.
First, let me say this. All of these states accepted federal funding for accepting immigrants. One, they didn't just escape here. And let's be clear on that. These folks didn't get here illegally. They got here because folks allowed them to come and migrate here, knowing that when they accounted for them, they would accept federal funding some kind of way, right? So that's one thing. And then the second part of it is not all of those immigrants are committing violent offenses as being told to people.
Right.
So, because that's what we're hearing is that, oh my God, they got to go because they're violent offenders. But when you go into jobs and you're removing people from their jobs, that's not the guy committing a violent offense, right? I understand the guy who's already committed the offense and now we're trying to evaluate whether or not his privilege should be revoked or not. But when you're going after law-abiding immigrants who are trying to gain citizenship, who are trying to pursue the American dream, like all of the immigrants before them, right? Then I think at some point we're doing damage, right?
Right, absolutely.
We're doing more harm to America than we are good because it's always been the land of the free, the one place you could go and change the outcome. Right. And when you start moving away from that, then we have a problem. And the sad part of it is that we're drawing so much negativity by circling it. Right. We're pursuing folks because they haven't gotten citizenship. Some of those people are in positions like the one guy who was a police officer who was arrested, the one guy who was a school administrator who was arrested. Somewhere along the line, we have to go, we're getting it wrong, right? Because now we're taking away people who are positively contributing to the United States of America's success. And so that's an issue. That is an issue because when we start losing scientists, doctors, and things of that nature, there's a problem, right? These guys are coming from their homeland, bringing other techniques that we haven't seen before. They're combining with techniques that here are already being used, and things are getting better, not worse. And most importantly, a lot of those immigrant workers, for lack of a better term, because they're trying to get on their feet, they're working those intermediate jobs that have major impact on our economies, right? And so when you remove those guys out of there, who's going to do those jobs, right? Who's willing to do some of those jobs, and who's willing to take that place when it's gone?
Right,
you see what I'm saying? So even though you think they possess a small loop in the link of that chain, it's still an important link, and we need to support those immigrants and make sure that they're at least having the possibility to apply to get legal citizenship.
Absolutely. Well, before I kind of piggyback on that a little bit, I swear I just cannot help to see this big old Pittsburgh cup just keeps staring me in the face here.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I was just like, it's one of them things where I need to have a tantrum and just knock it off the table.
But they're still going to come up. See that? We're never down, man. Always ready.
Right. But with that being said, man, as you say that there's a lot of propaganda about them being all criminals and and things of that nature. And yes, I believe that both mayors, when they kind of did their press conferences, and I feel safe to speak for the vast majority of United States citizens, that we want our communities, to be safe. Absolutely. So I agree that they need to kind of stand by the immigration community. But when we are having individuals, whether it's immigrants or citizens for that matter, that are here committing crime, we need to make sure that we take the necessary steps to rid our communities of that activity.
That's true, but we first have to prove that they're doing crimes.
Well,
I mean, here's the problem that we have. Technically, being here without legal citizenship is a crime in and of itself. However, we have in the past said that we will allow you the opportunity to seek citizenship, right? Kind of if you swam across the river or came across the ocean, if you made it to land, we would give you the opportunity versus sending you back, right? And in a lot of cases, these folks are migrating from very terrible circumstances. And when presented with the opportunity, they're working hard individuals that are willing to, establish themselves and be productive citizens. And so when I look at that, I go, yeah, we definitely should be doing some things with those folk that we know for a fact are committing crimes.
And those is the individuals that I'm talking about, that we have tracked them, we have records, or we have caught them in the act or whatever the case.
Right.
And that's why I said both immigrants or
even
citizens.
those guys, once they're here, they have a level of rights that we still have to follow under the Due Process Act. And so they're trying to circumvent that process.
Indeed, they are.
And so no one's saying that, guys, we shouldn't protect our borders. Okay, we're not saying that. But what we are saying is that we're not going to single individuals out that have being productive citizens, right? We're going to stand up for those guys and go, look, we're going to help you get this paperwork done. And the reality of it is, why is it taking so long for individuals to get citizenship once they've gotten here? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so that's one thing, too, to look at that practice. And then, sadly enough, we have to understand that there are some wheels at hand that are doing some things under the light to prevent those folks from being able to get their citizenship, and then but using them to their advantage, right? There's sometimes they're letting them vote and then counting the votes, and then other times they're not. Sometimes they're using their numbers to count censorship. right, for funding. Right, you got more people in the country, in the state, or whatever, and so we have to look at it. And I think even Trump said, yeah, he wanted some states to kind of redo their census to kind of show that those folks were immigrants. You know what I mean? I think we all agree that there could be some positive changes, but I don't think the answer is jumping out on people in schools and jobs and churches. We could handle it a little bit better.
Oh, absolutely.
We definitely could handle it better.
There was just recently an African-American citizen, that was taken into custody by ICE. Her and her dog, as she was leaving her apartment complex and getting ready to walk her dog. And she was taken into custody and held in custody for a short period before she was released, as she stated that, ICE was talking about, potential warrants and all this other type of stuff. So, again, the delivery.
And I think people need to understand that ICE, again, I'll say this in slow-mo so they can, ICE gets their power from you, the citizen. And so if you're not happy with the way ICE is performing their jobs, there is a procedure, if we learn that procedure, to stop some of the things that they're doing or change some of the laws they are enforcing. And so, one, I think that we definitely need to go to a strict policy so that these guys can stop running around with masks on, grabbing people. It's not just the fact that they have masks on, but it's the fact that the mask allows them to do harm to people and it go unaccounted for.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's the thing that I think we need to first make it clear. We don't want ICE coming out on a rampage, but if you are going to come out, we need to know who you are so that we can at least account for your behaviors. So that's one thing that we need to change as a nation, right? The second part of that is understanding that the presidency has nothing to do with Donald Trump. The presidency is an institution and has something to do with the people of America. And if you're not happy with the way Mr. Trump is doing his job in the Oval Office, again, the people have the possibilities of doing a call to action and things of that nature. There's procedures in place to change that as well. So if you understand the process, then you're not as frustrated, right?
Absolutely.
If you're standing by receiving the other end of it, not really understanding, then it's like, oh my God, I feel powerless. We're not powerless. The president doesn't have any more authority other than what the people give him. We're not a dictatorship. Right? And you have a process. There is a process. He does have some protection at the government level, but he doesn't have total protection, right? And so we need to understand what that process looks like and educate our people so they understand, okay, I don't have to live in fear, right? Because they running around like, oh my God, the planet's going to split open and a demon's going to come down and snatch it. We can't get him back, right? You have to really understand government and how it works for you and what the process is. And once you do that, you won't be living afraid. You'll go, you know what? They came and grabbed me, but I understand the process, right? Even if you are in custody somewhere and get the opportunity to write anything down, you can document what happened, research it, and find out if your rights are being violated. And that's what's not happening right now.
Right. And this is why we've always been saying, it's important for you to get involved.
You have to get involved. You can't keep sitting in the background going, man, that ain't happening to me. They chasing them immigrants.
Right.
Yeah, because we're all immigrants. I don't know if anybody knew that or not. Right, we're all immigrants. Some of us are actually born here, but our ancestors were immigrants coming in here. So you have to look at it and go, well, what are we doing here? Right, we're kicking out our own family members.
Absolutely. And again, for those, and when it kind of comes to voting, because I was just talking with a lady friend of mine here recently, and she was just extremely adamant, very adamant about not voting. And she hasn't voted for years, and she's, a middle-aged African-American female. And she is just so frustrated and so upset and so angry, in regards to what's going on. But yet I'm trying to explain to her that a no vote is voting.
Well, let me say this. So, because America has been stuck in a phase, and people don't realize that as you look at the Constitution, what does it say? The great American experiment, right? We're not sure what's going to work here. And for years now, we've been experimenting with what may work and what may not work. And as part of that experiment, there are going to be some outcomes, right? Some solutions, So, but you have to understand that this is the great experiment. That means that if you're a part of that, you can tweak it.
Absolutely.
Right? I don't think a lot of people understand the difference between the pursuit of happiness and the American dream, right? Because there are some that are living the American dream, and there are some that are in pursuit of happiness. And when you talk to folks who've been here most of their lives, they're generally in pursuit of happiness. And a lot of folks who got here after the fact are living the American dream.
Absolutely.
Right? And what is that? Man, I got the new car, the good job, extra money, nice building, property. And
Right.
guys like, man, I've been here all my life. I can't get a bag of wings. What's going on? Right? So that's the reality of America.
Indeed. And again, I just want to just kind of figure out you have to be involved.
You have to.
Get out there, know the system, vote. Again, make a change, make a difference. Your voice, your voice has to be heard. And it matters.
Change the outcome, guys. We have spent, according to the American statistics, we have designed America so that you come work for my brand before you get a chance to start your own brand. And we're calling it college, right? School. We're actually educating you to come work for me.
Absolutely.
And then once you spend enough time building my brand, I get the thumbs up on you and go, yeah, you okay, Beeks? You can start Jones now, right? And hopefully there's still some lead left in you and you can make it happen. But we don't see it that way because we're so used to, go to college. So we're going to college and we're building these industry brands that have already been out there, and we're happy to do it. And we reluctantly don't even realize, I'm doing great. Yeah, you're doing great, but they're doing much better, right? And so technically, you can afford your own insurance if you self-invest. You can afford your own medical and things of that nature. Self-investment. How many people are actually in pursuit of trying to get rich and don't realize if you itemize, you already were rich between your rent costs, bill pay. You've been giving your money away every day.
Right.
You just never self-invest. So even $1,200 a month for rent, right, turns out to be several $1,000s at the end of the year that you've been trying to pursue, and you're like, I'm broke, right? Because you gave it all away.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
So, understanding the power, man, understanding it.
Yes. Well, I do know, man, that we're rounding the corner of another fabulous show. But before I get out of here, I do want to touch on, that the military has arrived, in the city of Chicago today. And so they're
National Guard.
Yeah, the National Guard. Ain't they part of the military?
They are, but the Guard is primarily based in the state in which it serves, and they are allowed to, extend federal authority to those guys. So for right now, without the governor's permission, they're only allowed to protect federal buildings.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said,
yeah, that's that uniform code of military justice, because we're not allowed to turn soldiers directly on citizens, and the military operates under a different code of law. So the rules of engagement are completely different between civilian and military.
Absolutely. So again, I just want to quickly get this out, because I know that, again, they're there in Illinois. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt, on social media between certain citizens of Chicago that has made various comments. And then you've also had individuals who are part of the military, whatever branch or whatever that is, has also made various comments about, them coming, and there's been, this back and forth, type of a deal.
Yeah.
I want to say to the people, not only in the city of Chicago, but, kind of across our country, we understand that there's a lot of trial and tribulation right now. There's a lot of frustration, a lot of irritation, and things of that nature of why some of these things are happening right now. Stay calm, stay peaceful. Do not place yourself in a situation, to be accosted by law enforcement, if that makes sense. Because again, they still have a job to do. The mayor, as well as the chief of police of Chicago, held a press conference, right? There was a situation where some ICE officers had just recently got surrounded, by several different vehicles and some individuals. They noticed a female with a gun, and they end up getting into a shooting, and this young lady was struck twice. And now I have not been able to confirm or deny if she was part of these vehicles or group of people that was surrounding them or whatever the case may be. But just like the chief of police said, is that they still want to work with their federal partners, on gun crimes and sex crimes and sex trafficking and all these other different things that impact our communities across the country. But they do not necessarily support, these immigrants being rounded up and things of that nature.
Yeah.
I will say this here is that, like he said, is that law enforcement still has a due diligence to make sure that when they come out, even though that they're not necessarily involved in these raids and things of that nature, they still have a due diligence to come out and make sure that scenes are safe, that evidence, is collected, and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think the hardest part, and a lot of what these military commanders are worried about is the rule of engagement. They're really worried about that because the military operates under completely separate rules of engagement.
Absolutely.
And so when we're talking about citizens, we don't consider citizens to be combatants. And so as a result of that, the military does not have weaponry designed as civilian law enforcement capacity, right? They have high impact, traumatizing weapons, and they're limited in what they have in terms of being able to use less than lethal force, right? We're not out there tasing people. They're out there taking lives. And that's the goal, is to you're at a point where you have to take a life to secure an area. Now that we do, the CID does have, criminal investigation division and military police, but they're not necessarily designed to handle inner city, issues. Right. And so the problem that we have is, if for some reason you got citizens that begin to open fire on a soldier, you almost have a civil war situation, and that creates very tough military rules of engagement issues, right?
Indeed.
And civil penalties. You know what I mean? So how does the lay citizen deal with almost martial law circumstance? You know what I mean? It does draw a question to whether or not the president could try to invoke martial law, because at this point, once the military would take over, then the citizens, including police officers, would no longer be in control. But I will remind citizens that to prevent that, make sure you are exercising your rights as a citizen. Because if the National Guard is in your city, then you need to be talking to the governor and your representatives about, nope, we didn't ask for this, we didn't authorize this, and where did that power come from for the president to order the military in that state to be activated for that specific reason? You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So that's where the disconnect is happening. Even though, cities like Minneapolis and Chicago have violent crime issues, it's not open violence, right? We're having skirmishes here and there, right, of citizens disagreeing and handling it improperly, not necessarily military-style engagement. And the real question is, what is the National Guard's job going to be other than containment, right? Because once you get past containment and start actually receiving gunfire, those soldiers are going to respond back, and it's not going to be a machine gun. You see what I'm saying? If somebody's in the building shooting at me, even though they're civilians, am I going to be authorized to use a law, which is a ground-to-air business? You know what I mean? So those are the things we have to look at. Like, man, what do we have?
So, right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And this is why I want to stress, how important it is for individuals to stay calm and to kind of know how to move. Because right now, moving with force is not necessarily the answer, as it is moving as a unit and knowing, what you can do and how it needs to be done to have an input and an impact on the overall outcome. We said it before, and I'll say it again, is that these laws, that are being enforced, whether that's local, state, federal, etc., comes from you. And if you fail to get involved, and know your rights and know the law and so on and so forth, then you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I failed myself. I failed my neighbor. Now, again, I'm not pointing any fingers or anything like that there at anybody else. What I'm trying to do is basically educate, enhance, and empower you to get out and be involved and know who you're voting for and know your rights and just get involved with what's going on in your community.
Yeah, and I think what people need to understand, one of our first flags was don't tread on me, right? The coil snake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, I tell you, historically, tyranny has always ended badly.
Absolutely.
All right? When you paint people into a corner, they will come out. And I want people to understand that we're all apex predators, right? Mm-hmm. If you put me in a situation to defend myself, it's going to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Given the right circumstances and situations, we're all capable of doing some serious damage. Pay attention.
Indeed.
Pay attention, because putting the military there and start forcing people into thinking that you're trying to access control of their ability to be free and move, you're stepping on some questionable ground there. And if you're not careful, we're going to have some internal civil issues that we didn't want to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that being said, man, one last thing before we get out of here, man, is that I want to say thank you, to former Chief Green of the Golden Valley Police Department. Thank you for opening up your door to have that conversation with me. Thank you for giving me a potential opportunity to work under your tutelage, even though that things did not pan out as planned, but maybe they did. But we definitely wish you well, as you move forward. And remember that one's rejection is God's protection. So even though that you may not, and this is not just for Chief Green, this is for all of us, even though that things don't necessarily pan out, work out the way that we want them at that particular time, trust and believe in the man upstairs. So then therefore, as that blessing kind of comes through, you're going to be able to receive it and not be so bitter or upset or frustrated about what happened, last week.
And I will say this to piggyback off that. This is very controversial, and I know it's going to turn some heads, but it is still incumbent upon the sheriff to make sure that every police department in the county is meeting certain standards, and that we have a uniform standard of operation and procedure across the board in each county that represents the state of Minnesota. And I still think that the sheriff should have taken a closer look at what was happening in the city of Golden Valley in terms of the law enforcement management I think there was a responsibility there to take a closer look, not just providing additional services with deputies, but to actually sit down with the chief law enforcement officer, the city management, and the mayor and get it right.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that happened in this particular case. And as a result, we lost a pioneer who stepped on some toes, made some people upset by doing things differently, and as a result of that, he's no longer in that city, and that's something that we see all too often across the state of Minnesota involving officers of colors in positions of leadership. I said it.
There it is. Well, with that being said, man, we're going to get on up out here. Again, we want to say thank you to CCX Create as they allow us to be here each and every Wednesday from 5 until 6ish.
Yes.
To provide you news that you can use. Remember, this is a platform for you to have your voice heard. So if you have any services or resources, please come on down. So then, therefore, we can educate, empower, and enhance the community as a whole. Brother Joe, it's been a fabulous show. Remember, we got Columbus Day kind of coming up here. So I don't believe that there's any school, banks and things of that nature will be closed. We're kind of having some of this chillier weather, so make sure that these kids are appropriately dressed on these bus stops.
Yes.
Continue to look out for these kids because it's starting to get darker and darker, especially as they're standing out there in the morning time for these buses. Hey, cars, slow down. Look at the traffic signs that kind of pop out, and don't be running past the stop signs. We want our kids to remain safe and have a fun day at school, enjoyable day at school. With that being said, Brother Joe, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on over to you so you can go ahead and hit him with that famous backpack so we can get on up out of here.
Yes, Christopher Columbus, the guy who discovered a land that was people already in it. All righty, hide your backyards. Yeah, with that being said, we want to thank everybody for showing up and supporting us as you do. I see we got a lot of comments on there. Shout out to Candace, my daughter Candace. Today is her birthday. She's the big 30.
30, huh?
There you go. So happy birthday to Candace. And we just want to say get well fast to Pamela Johnson, who took a fall today over in Brooklyn Park area. She was sent to the ER, but she's getting better faster. So we just want to say, get better faster, Pam. And with that being said, we start, middle, and end that show with the backpack.
That famous backpack.
All right, so I'm going to hit you up with that backpack. That backpack consists of making sure you have your driver's license and insurance before you get in that vehicle. Remember to place them above the visor. That way, if stopped by law enforcement, it's easily accessible and won't be mistaken for a weapon. Remember to stay calm, allow the officer to go through his spiel, keep your hands where they can be seen, and as always, make it on home with your loved ones. Same thing when walking down the street. Make sure you got your driver's license or ID where it's easily accessible. Remember to stay calm, keep your hands where they can be seen, allow the officer to go through his spiel, and as always, make it on home to his loved ones. Shout out there to everybody who's going to be out and about helping people in the community. Make sure you see something, say something.
Indeed.
Also want to send one quick shout before we get out of here to Sheriff Witch. She did have a program where she officially had 90 corrections deputies hired and got them all buttoned up and in place. And so hopefully that'll reduce some of the funding costs that we've been spending across the county in terms of shipping inmates and things. So kudos to Sheriff Witch.
Was those deputies and correctional officers?
I believe it was 90 corrections deputies, hoorah,
okay,
and like 28 or 29 patrol deputies. So we're always happy to hear that there's more coming to the field, which means you as a county citizen, when we stop spending as much money, those taxes go down and we can begin to enjoy our property.
Absolutely.
Right? All right. We talked about a whole lot of things. And with that being said, my name's Joe Banks.
And I'm Anthijuan Beeks.
And we just talked about it.
Peace.